many families in Australia, we grew up with a very anti-Nazi education, and with people that served both in the First World War and the Second World War. PDFs. So every day I study Hitler, I do, because that's how these people think. My grandfather was killed in the Blitzkrieg. My grandfather was one of the first British soldiers to be killed in the Second World War by the Blitzkrieg. Okay? He prepared for 2 years before it happened, but he still got killed. And it's something that I replay in my head all the time because I lost my grandpa. I never got to know him. Share. So what I do, guys, isn't new. I want you to know that, okay? So I had a great uncle called Oliver Ray McConnell, Raymond Oliver McConnell, Lance Corporal Raymond Oliver McConnell, born 1917 and he died 1977. So he died a few years before I was born, but his brother was my pop. So you can see private record collection, extent 1 centimeter, wallets, letters, McConnell, Oliver Raymond, Australia, Germany, and Italy, 1940 and 1944. So Second World War, 1939. Collection relating to the Second World War service of QX2411, Lance Corporal Oliver Nobby Raymond McConnell, 2nd 15th Infantry Battalion, 2nd Battalion Imperial Force, Australia, Italy, and Germany, 1940-1944. Wallet number 1 consists of 13 letters, including associated envelopes, 13 postcards, and 2 envelopes from Lance Corporal Oliver Raymond McConnell to his sister, Miss Ivy Myrtle Stevens, nee McConnell, and brother-in-law, Mr. Albert Edward Burt Stevens. The correspondence was written by Lance Corporal McConnell during the period of his training in Australia, service with the 2nd 15th Australian Infantry Battalion in Darwin, Northern Territories, and time as a prisoner of war in Italy and Germany. In his letters, Lance Corporal McConnell writes about receiving mail from home, his first impressions of Darwin, a local brawl, and being on guard duty. After becoming a prisoner of war, he writes about the weather, his health, quiet Christmas celebrations, snowball fights, Red Cross parcels, irregular mail, and working in a sugar factory in his correspondence. Lance Corporal McConnell also responds to news from home, also in the collection in 2 newspaper clippings, waving goodbye, 2 Queenslanders killed, which mentions Oliver R. McConnell missing, believed POW, and a leaflet titled Australian Red Cross Society Prisoners of War Post to Prisoners of War Beyond the Commonwealth. So he was a writer of letters, and he was held in Stalag Luft III. So that's what we're going to see here. He was held in Stalag Luft III. Like, I think that was the one we just went to, right? The Great Escape. Here. So if you've seen The Great Escape with Steve McQueen and all of the greats in it, this was my uncle, Lance Corporal Oliver Raymond McConnell. He died 4 years before I was born, but he was my great-grandpa, Victor Roy's brother. So Camp 57, Camp Isarco. So there were prisoner of war camps in Italy, Libya, and Stalag Luft III C. So Second World War rolls, Middle East recovered prisoners of war. So date of capture, 7/4/1941. So that's like during the Rats of Tobruk. That's during Tobruk, right? And then date of fate when he was released from captivity. He was released from Stalag Luft III. So let's have a look. There's more stuff on him here. Nominal role. of prisoners held at Stalag Luft III. This is the National Archives. So my grandfather's brother is held in here. The nominal rolls. Stalag Luft III camp. There's all the people that were held. McConnell. It's a different one. But he was held there. So, like James Garner and okay, so people say that English Nazi collaborators may have aided in the recapture of the dudes that got away. But my family were not involved in that shit. But that's interesting, isn't it? Document discovered by National Archives shows claims made after the war. Okay, this is interesting. 2 Englishmen. Okay, who were they? Certainly many examples. 2 Englishmen gave up. That said, okay, so let's look at this. Okay, this is interesting. English Nazi collaborators may have aided recapture of Great Escape POWs. Document discovered in National Archives. It's one of the most celebrated heroic failures of the Second World War, the great escape of dozens of Allied prisoners of war from a German camp by tunneling under the wire are loosely depicted in The Great Escape. 78 British and International Air Force members successfully escaped from Stalag Luft III camp in March 1944, only for most of them to be recaptured and 50 brutally executed. Almost exactly 80 years on, historians re-examine wartime documents, and they've uncovered a bombshell claim made by one of the escapers that the murdered men were betrayed by 2 English Nazi collaborators. The allegations were made by Desmond Plunkett, a Royal Air Force officer who forged maps for escapers and inspired the character played by Donald Pleasence in the film, which also starred Steve McQueen and Richard Attenborough. Unlike Pleasence's blind forger who was caught and killed after escaping, Plunkett was one of the few escapers whose lives were spared after he was recaptured. Writing in a questionnaire in May 1945 after he was liberated from another prisoner of war camp, Plunkett wrote, "There are 2 individuals whose activities have a direct bearing on the fate of the 50 executed prisoners of war. These 2 persons must be traced, as both are undoubtedly indigenous Englishmen and must be tried for the collaborating activities with the enemy." The claim came to light this month in the National Archives. I've read a lot of the material that was produced post-war around the executions of the 50 officers. I've never come across any suggestion that there was any kind of collaboration. Did it happen? It's absolutely possible. I think mistaken because of the suggestion 2 supposedly treacherous individuals were responsible for the murders. I don't see how that is possible, because the escapees were captured because they made mistakes. They weren't betrayed. It's also impossible to see how 2 supposedly treacherous individuals could be responsible for their murders, because those murders were on the direct orders of Adolf Hitler. Unlike the events depicted in the movie, when the escapers are rounded up and shot en masse, the murders were carried out by Gestapo officers in numerous locations throughout the Third Reich, wherever the escapers managed to get to. Walters said. He has argued that It is this atrocity rather than the failed escape, which ultimately makes the mass breakout from Stalag Luft III remarkable. It's not an act of war. It's just straight murder. It's grotesque. It's horrific. The reason he believes Plunkett was mistaken, and I hate to take issue with the great escaper, is most likely thanks to paranoia, understandably engineered by 10 months at the hands of the Gestapo and a breakdown, I think, that he was putting two and two together and making five. So this is about that. I don't know why that comes up when I look up my uncle. Maybe there's some suggestion that my uncle was a collaborator. That's fucked. All right. Okay, guys. What's the next one? Okay. So here, German Australians who served under the Rising Sun. John, Jack, Jacob Funk. This is my family. From Germany, German heritage. German Jewish heritage. That's him during the war. All the battles that he fought there. And where my family comes from. But my uncle, I don't think that Stalag Luft III thing that was just something that came up. But I don't think my uncle was a collaborator, but he was a survivor. He was in that fucking camp. And he's not English anyway. He was Australian. So couldn't be him. But apparently, they reckon somebody dobbed them in. But my great uncle was a prisoner of Stalag Luft III, and it's not a lie when I talk about it. So when everybody here treats me like the Gestapo and acts like I'm in prison and makes a joke about the fact that they've got me in prison, it's just like my uncle when he was a prisoner of the Nazis in the Second World War. He was. But so he was a soldier, right? He got caught in Libya. But he was a soldier. He got caught in Libya during Tobruk. And then, he was transported around and all that type of stuff and held. And then he was on the Great March. So he wasn't a collaborator. He was on the Great March. He survived that Great March thing. So after they killed those officers, they got all these dudes to put all their stuff together and they marched them across Germany because the Russians were coming. So they got all the Allied airmen and stuff. So my uncle, he wasn't an airman, but he was being held with all the Allied airmen because he'd been caught in Tobruk. So kind of what's the character's name? James Coburn in The Great Escape, or fucking the other character, James Garner or James Coburn. My uncle was like that, but he didn't escape. He stayed there, and then he was force marched, but he died at 50 because his heart was really bad from being force marched across Germany and from being held as a prisoner of war and in labor camps. So he was held in the labor camps in Germany. So he was there, like he was in the Ruhr Valley when they were getting fucking went work, and the Germans were forcing him to work in the concentration camps, the Stalag Luft III, and the camps and stuff that they distributed all these dudes to. Like if you fucked up, they'd send you to a concentration camp. So like, and these are Allied airmen all trying to escape and everything that was stuck in Germany. Fortress mainland Germany. So, and then my grandfather got killed in the Blitzkrieg. So my grandfather was preparing to fight the Nazis. So my grandfather had been on the border as a Scottish soldier, ambushing the Germans when they were making their small time incursions into separate parts of the border. So my grandfather was posted around the Maginot Line, and then he ended up getting killed in a place called Abbeville near Dunkirk during the retreat in May 1940. So my grandfather was in the rear guard action. He stayed behind and fought when everybody got out safe. So he fought a rear guard. So that's what I've done here too. I fought a rear guard. I always know how to fight rear guards because my grandpa was rear guard. But when it comes to a lot of the skills that I know, my grandma was tricky, right? She used to like come and like tell me stuff, you know. She was tricky, dude, about stuff, you know. Back in the day, she told me stuff, man, about all these fucking people, dude, and how to treat them. And she told me, like, if you're ever in the situation like Nobby or this, if they ever held you, if you ever held prisoner, my grandma brought me up like that. If you're ever held prisoner of war, this is what you do. How do I know? Well, your uncle was a prisoner of war, and this is what you have to do if you have to survive the Nazis, like Diary of Anne Frank. This is what you have to do if you have to survive the Nazis. That's what I was told. So I was told by my grandma that like the reason why everybody in Hollywood had similar names to us and stuff, the German Jewish names, was because of the Holocaust and because we were forced to go there, and that's true. But I'm connected with the Flynns and all that stuff, and I've never been anti-Semitic ever. Never a day in my life. Anybody who tries to say so is making a false equivalency of me throwing shit at Italian gangsters that came around here. Those guys that came around here, the CFMEU hitmen, they're not Jewish people. They're Italians. And they're mobsters and hitmen. They're not Jews. If they were rabbis and Jewish people, then that would be a problem, wouldn't it? But they weren't rabbis and Jewish people. They were Italians. So my family has a history of being held prisoner by Nazis and overcoming them. All right. So yeah, the Great Escape, man. I'm the fucking nephew of someone that was held in the same prison as the Great Escape. And Steve McQueen, he rides a motorbike in there and does all the really cool stunts and everything. And my birthday is the 23rd of March. Steve's was the 24th. And I'm a huge fan of Steve McQueen, of course. But my uncle was held in Stalag Luft III. And he was on that forced march, okay?